Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Saab F-35. This is a Squadron vehicle strike aircraft that is currently rank 7 and is 10.3 BR in air RB and 10.7 BR in ground RB. It sits in the Swedish Air Force's tech tree, though flies under the Danish flag. It currently costs up to 520,000 Squadron RP or up to 7,600 Golden Eagles, and also comes with 20 backups. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about the strike Draken, including its stats, how it plays. I'll go over its strengths and weaknesses, I'll give it some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation on if I feel this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing, but without further ado, let's get into the review. Now to start, I'll place the stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to note are its armament, its rate of climb, and its countermeasures. Now for how it plays. The Saab F-35 is, for all intents and purposes, a heavier strike-oriented version of the J-35F, which the J-35F is also the base for the J-35XS, meaning that the F-35 and J-35XS are essentially really close relatives based on the same Draken variant. Regardless, this means that the F-35 is heavier than the J-35XS, has worse performance than it despite having the same engine, and can only carry 2 AIM-9Ns compared to 6 RB-24Js for the XS. To top it off, the RB-24J is likely a little bit better than the AIM-9N, as the RB-24J is, like the AIM-9N, a descendant of the AIM-9J, but the RB-24J is a further improvement on the AIM-9J than the AIM-9N is, with the reduced smoke motor and arguably better tracking compared to the N. If nothing else, being that the F-35 is a strike aircraft, it can actually carry quite a large anti-ground payload, with up to 9 1,000-pound bombs or up to 152 rockets, with a ballistics computer assisting in their aiming. With that brief overview aside, the F-35 has quite a few pros and cons in terms of air battles. First, while it is quick, it isn't quite as quick as the J-35XS, which isn't too much of a problem when flying in a straight line, but when trying to regain energy after a tight turn, the F-35 will be even worse off than the XS. To make things worse, because the F-35 has modifications that add a fairly substantial amount of weight to it, it will typically have less energy heading into turns, and when in turns, it will deplete its energy even quicker than it otherwise would. If you don't know, the entire J-35 line of aircraft is infamous for its insane amounts of speed bleed when they turn, and the F-35 may be the worst of them all. This makes it so that enemies can gain on you very quickly after a turn and shoot you down with ease, which could even be from a missile, as the F-35 can only carry up to 24 flare or chaff large countermeasures with an additional 44 pure chaff countermeasures on top. Thankfully, these are at least the more useful large countermeasures, but this is still a limited amount. To compound things, the F-35 only has access to 2 missiles and only 180 rounds in total between its 2 cannons. While you can definitely get kills with these weapons, especially with the quite good AIM-9Ns, the limited amount of overall ammunition can hurt quite a bit at this BR. In all, this leads to the F-35 being relegated to being more of a support fighter in air battles, as it really doesn't maintain the energy needed in turns to dogfight constantly, nor does it have the armament to participate in more than a small amount of engagements. If you were, for example, the J-35XS, that is a faster vehicle, and it has more of an armament, being that it has 6 missiles compared to 2, thus somewhat negating its really bad speed bleed. Now, insofar as base bombing is concerned, the F-35 is actually quite decent, as it can carry up to 9 1,000-pound bombs if you totally neglect to carry any air-to-air missiles. This allows for you to destroy about 1 2/3 bases with a full bomb load. Personally though, I would only do this by switching loadouts after landing at base to refuel and rearm after the majority of the enemy team has been destroyed, because quite honestly, having 9 1,000-pound bombs on this thing, even 7 1,000-pound bombs, will just weigh you down way too much. Now for close air support, the F-35 is decent, but nothing more. Despite being born from the Draken family of aircraft, the F-35 is a heavier strike aircraft that can actually carry a decent amount of ordnance. Unfortunately, however, none of it is guided, nor does any of it have any sort of decent range. Thankfully, carrying up to 9 1,000-pound bombs or up to 152 Mighty Mouse or M247 rockets will give you a tremendous amount of capability if you manage to get up close to the enemy team, especially being that the F-35 has ballistics computers. That's the problem though, getting up close to the enemy team, as despite its F-35 name, this vehicle is not stealthy at all. With almost any sort of somewhat high BR enemy SPAA in the match, the F-35 is likely to die, as it has no long-range weapons and has very limited amounts of countermeasures. This means that, as with its air combat potential, the F-35 is a bit limited insofar as what it can do in most matches. On a side note, despite weighing more, the M247 rockets have a much lower penalty to rate of climb and top speed compared to the Mighty Mouse rockets. Strangely though, it seems like the M247s are far less accurate than the Mighty Mouse rockets, even despite their nearly 50% higher speeds. It's almost as though the M247s are rocket shotguns, which makes aiming at anything beyond a kilometer or so very iffy, even with the ballistics computers. Now with all that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. This vehicle's very good overall performance in terms of top speed, rate of climb, and acceleration, though it is, as I mentioned before, a bit worse than the fighter variants of the J-35, as the F-35 is a bit heavier due to the additional internal fuel tanks and a heavier construction. Second, this vehicle has excellent maneuverability. Third, it has fantastic roll rate. For its fourth strength, it has a fairly heavy anti-drone loadout, including up to 9 1,000-pound bombs, 9 500-pound bombs with both normal and Snake Eye variants, and up to 152 rockets in both the M247 and Mighty Mouse varieties. And finally, the AIM-9Ns that can carry are very good for rear aspect missiles and are essentially upgraded AIM-9Js with better tracking. And now for its weaknesses, first, it lacks a radar. Second, as mentioned before, it has terrible energy bleed in turns, arguably among the worst in the entire game for any plane. Third, it can carry only 2 AIM-9Ns, though at least AIM-9Ns are fairly good for rear aspect missiles. For its fourth weakness, it has a fairly limited countermeasure count, with just 24 all-purpose large countermeasures and 44 chaff countermeasures. Fifth, it has a low total ammo count with just 180 rounds between its two 30mm cannons. This means that you are likely to have many situations where you have no ammo, but you might have excellent placement against an enemy, even early on in matches. Additionally, while not insanely slow, the muzzle velocity of its 30mm rounds is less than 800 meters per second, which is slower than most cannon shells at this BR and can be extremely tricky to use when fighting such fast jets. And finally, this vehicle lacks guided weapons entirely, at least for anti-ground, which is bad for this BR, especially considering that it's a strike aircraft, and doubly so because it looks like it has a laser designator in the nose. By the way, fun fact about this, while it lacks a radar, it actually has a counterweight in the nose in order to simulate the weight of a radar. Now with all that being said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. And first, for dogfighting and RRB, I give it a 5.25 out of 10. In the case of the Saab F-35, it turns incredibly well, but loses speed incredibly quickly, thus making it a sitting duck for large periods of time in any given match if you consistently turn against enemy aircraft. Still, when it turns better than almost any other plane around this BR. Its missiles, being the AIM-9Ns, are actually quite good for this BR, but you only have 2 of them and they are rear aspect only. Still, they give you a good chance to at least get 1 kill per match with them alone, with another kill or 2 being earned via dogfighting with your cannons. In all though, this is a heavier version of the pure fighter variants of the J-35, which makes it into a somewhat less capable fighter than those vehicles, especially compared to the XS, and you can feel it in how the F-35 flies. It's more sluggish, loses energy somewhat more quickly, and has fewer missiles, all while maintaining a very similar BR and playing in essentially the same exact brackets as the other ones. This makes the Saab F-35 good, but not great by any means. Now for close air support, I give it a 4.25 out of 10. This is a weird category for this plane, as the J-35 was introduced as a fighter, but the F-35 variant being turned into a strike aircraft, which is a very weird role for this aircraft. As such, while it can actually carry a hell of a lot of ordnance by any measure, including up to 9 1,000-pound bombs or 152 rockets, it has a very basic loadout with no guided ordnance, though it at least has a ballistics computer to aim its bombs and rockets. At this BR, you start to see much more powerful SPAA, and as such, having no guided ordnance is a huge detriment as it makes your plane a much easier target, as you'll have to get up close and personal to even perform any level of CAS. Because of this, I really can't give the Saab F-35 anything beyond a score in the 4 range in this category. It can carry a whole lot of hate, but what's the point if you won't be able to use it if the enemy has any sort of semi-modern SPAA? Now overall, I give it a 4.75 out of 10. Because this is a strike aircraft, I'm going to weigh CAS a bit more than I normally do in my aircraft reviews. As such, we have a somewhat below average overall score for the F-35. Don't get me wrong, this is not a bad aircraft, but it's one of the most pure fighter designs ever created in the jet age that was made heavy and given lackluster equipment in order to perform as a strike aircraft, which made its capabilities as a fighter noticeably worse. As such, we have a somewhat average fighter for this BR and a somewhat below average strike aircraft, whereas other Draken variants know their role as a fighter and perform it very well while totally eschewing any sort of close air support capability. But I guess that's what you get for trying to turn the Draken into something that it was never meant to be. Now with that said, do I recommend researching or purchasing this aircraft. No, I really don't. I'd set it as a low priority to research via Squadron RP. Many Squadron vehicles are better than the F-35 relative to BR, including the BMP-2M, A4E Early, Bishma TWMP, F-5E FCQ, and far more. I've actually got reviews on almost all of them if you want to check them out. The F-35, while not bad, is not very good with where it is currently. Even if it ever receives a GM-12B bullpups that it had at one point during its service with Denmark, the F-35 will still be average at best, considering that AGM-12Bs are manually guided. With that said, the F-35 is almost the definition of meh in War Thunder, as it is just meh in almost every role that it can play. As such, I do not recommend researching it, nor do I recommend purchasing it with Golden Eagles. This is a plane to research only after you get almost every other Squadron vehicle out of the way first, outside of maybe some ships, and even then some of them are actually quite good, especially in comparison to this beefy Draken. Also, if you couldn't guess, I do not give it my Tankenstein seal of approval. It's not bad, it just really is not good at all. Again, it turned into something that was never meant to be. Now with that said, thanks so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking this video, subscribing. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. I'm very interested to read your opinions on this vehicle and on the video. By the way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.